Hello and welcome to our Friday video. So it's going to be another special video this Friday, not quite like last Friday when I asked you to go have fun in nature. This one is setting out kind of some expectations for final paper. So instead of an exam at the end of the course and the semester, we have a final paper in this class. And so just giving you some kind of ideas about what to be thinking about, how to start preparing for that so that you're not in a big crunch at the end of the semester. So for our final paper in this class, I'm looking for you to pick a topic that's of interest to you. So you have a lot of flexibility in the sort of topic you choose. It has to involve the environment in some way, but that's a pretty loose standard, right? So you could be interested in sports teams and look at some aspect of how there are environmental implications of building a new stadium or having people travel to go to games or things like that, right? You could look at how environmental conditions affect sports teams. I'm just off the top of my head thinking of things, and so I'm willing to take a fairly broad view. If there's something that you're looking at related to the political system, if you can tie it in with environmental regulation in some way, it's okay if the focus isn't all on the environment, as long as it is related to the environment. That's the standard you have to meet. If you have a question, if your topic meets that standard, reach out to me. I'm happy to give you feedback. One thing that I will encourage, and you'll see this in the descriptions of this final paper, is it's really easy to take on a broad topic and then find yourself, swimming in this big ocean of material. And it's hard to have cohesive arguments if you're trying to bite off a really big amount. So the most common feedback I give people when they reach out to me with a potential topic is I encourage them to narrow it down. I say, you might want to look at not just irrigation in agriculture in general. You might want to look at irrigation for a certain crop in a certain area. That's the sort of, if you're looking at irrigating hay in Arizona, like that's a good scope of a topic for a paper like this. In general, I'm looking for students in the undergrad section, roughly 6 to 8 pages. For graduate students, roughly 7 to 10 pages. With that change, so graduate students, I'm expecting to have a small literature review included, looking at some of the academic literature in their topic. That's not a requirement for the undergrads. I do want everyone to appropriately cite sources where you're drawing material from, but undergrads aren't expected to take on the academic literature for their topic so much. They can, they might, for example, pick a topic based on a cost-benefit analysis that they find searching a government website, and their discussion can be basically about that cost-benefit analysis, right? So if you choose a topic that is something that government agencies are working on right now, there's a lot of kind of concrete stuff to talk about. You can look at the numbers that they have estimated if they're doing something like that. If you're interested in taking that route, one good place to start is regulations.gov. It's a website that the federal government updates with all kinds of documents related to the regulatory process. And so proposed rules, feedback to those, final rules, and so that's kind of where the meat grinder is doing its work when it comes to policies happening for a lot of environmental stuff is in this regulatory process. And so that's where you could find things like cost-benefit analysis, often called regulatory impact analysis or economic impact analysis, sometimes called cost-benefit analysis or benefit-cost analysis. You can search for all of those terms and see what kind of interesting stuff comes up. But you don't have to be analyzing a government policy that's in place or proposed, you could propose your own policy. You could say, I really think that all coffee should have to go through this green certification process. And that's not a requirement that the government currently has. It's not one that the government has proposed that I know of. But you could propose it and analyze it in an economic manner. Obviously, your paper is going to look different depending on what sort of topic you're taking on and what stage it's at. If it's an actual government policy that has a cost-benefit analysis, you'll have a lot of numbers to work with. It might be a little bit easier to write that paper, in my opinion. But I want you to write about something you're interested in. So, I mean, if you have an idea you'd like to explore, it's a proposal, there's no real numbers to work with, that's okay. I tend to do empirical research. I like doing research with numbers. So for me, it's easier to write a paper when I have numbers to talk about. But not everyone is that way by any means. And so you can take a much more, craft arguments to support your position. There does have to be some element of economics, and again, the topic has to involve the environment, but there's a lot of flexibility on this. And so with flexibility comes, sometimes you find yourself just lost in a sea of options, kind of like if you have a really big topic and you don't know where to start. And so I do include some sample topics, and I encourage you to find something that interests you and then kind of think of a policy affecting that is much more narrow in scope. That's a good way to narrow down your topic to have a bite-sized piece. So I have samples of that in the paper description document. I include a grading rubric so you know what I'm looking for when I go to grade these. And I also include a sample paper from a previous year that a student submitted. Not saying that it's perfect, but saying that this is a good example of the sort of thing that I'm looking for. The elements, the way it's put together. And so again, sometimes people use a lot of numbers. Sometimes they even calculate some of those numbers themselves. If that's you, then that's great. If that's not you, that's fine too. It does not have to be a data-driven project. And so, again, it'll kind of depend where you're at, what you're looking to get out of this. I really hope you're able to find a topic that you find interesting, because it's a lot better writing a paper on something that's interesting to you. But that's up to you. So if I can help in any way, let me know. An easy way for me to do that is, if you're not sure if a topic is right, if you're kind of just lost, send me an email. We'll figure out a time to meet or trade emails back and forth, thinking about it, an appropriate topic, an appropriate scope for that, where you may find good sources or data or government reports or things that you may want to base this on. The other way for me to help in a formal way, I put in the paper description that if you get me a draft or an outline or something by Friday, April 16th, then within a week, I'll get you feedback on that. And so you don't have to do this, it's not required, but it's an opportunity for you to get feedback from me before you're turning it in for a grade. So I can tell you that in the past, students who have taken advantage of this opportunity have tended to do well as far as grades on this final paper. Now, does that mean that the process of me giving feedback improves the papers in a way that improves the grade they would have gotten? Probably. I would like to think so, right? You're getting feedback directly from the person who's going to be grading it. So I'm pretty sure there is a causal connection here. There may also be a selection issue, in the sense that the type of students who are willing to put the work in to write the paper ahead of time to submit it for an optional thing to get feedback often tend to be the type of students who are quite motivated, and maybe they would have gotten pretty good grades anyway. It's one of the challenges of empirical research. It's often hard to distinguish between selection issues and some sort of causal effect that we have. But I certainly like to think, I mean, I know because I've seen papers improve going through this process, that it's an opportunity that I encourage you to take advantage of. So optional deadline of April 16th to get feedback on that from me. And if it's a draft of the whole paper, that's great. If it's a draft of the intro section and an outline of the rest of the paper, that's great too. If it's just an outline, that's great. I'll give you feedback on whatever stage your paper is in at that time, as long as it's submitted by that time. And of course, the feedback will differ. If it's a complete draft of the paper, I'll mark up suggested edits, wording changes, things like that. If it's an outline, I'm giving you feedback, more at that stage, big picture sort of feedback, how you may want to change structuring, how the ideas flow, stuff like that. But I won't be getting into the same sort of detailed feedback because there isn't as much detail there. But whatever you get me, I'll get feedback on. The paper itself is due on Thursday of finals week. So that is toward the end of April. I believe it is April 20. Might as well give you the right date. April 29th. Thursday, April 29th at 3 p.m. is when your final paper is due. There'll be a place on Blackboard to submit it, and you can always email it to me. Doesn't matter how it gets to me as long as you get it to me. I don't have a lot of flexibility on extending that deadline because I need to have grades turned around pretty quickly. That's Thursday of finals week. I have to have them in by Monday the next week, I believe. So I basically am grading these over the weekend, which means I need them. I need to have them to be able to grade them. So there we are. That's the final paper for the course. If you have questions about stuff, if I can help improve it, let me know. These papers for a few students in the past have gone on to kind of bigger things. They've used this as a foundation for a senior thesis, for a student undergrad research project, for things like that. So this is an opportunity that the more you put in, the more you can get out. So it's kind of, you're directing it, you're driving the ship. Don't get it stuck in the Suez Canal, and we'll all make through. All right, thank you guys. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week, and we'll be talking about all kinds of fun stuff, thinking about what kind of policies we might prefer over others and what metrics we're using to make that decision.